What's up everyone, welcome back. And before we dive into today's story, make sure to subscribe to my channel, hit that like button, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. Trust me, today's topic is going to be a real treat because we're taking a deep dive into one of the most iconic and timeless classic cars ever made, the 1961 Volvo P1900. Now, when you think about Volvo, what usually comes to mind? Probably safety, reliability, maybe those boxy sedans and wagons from the 70s, 80s, and 90s that just seemed to never die. But back in the early 60s, Volvo shocked the world with something totally different. Instead of producing another practical, no-nonsense car, they built something elegant, sleek, and genuinely sexy. A car that could stand next to Italian sports coupes and not feel out of place. That car was the P1900. And it didn't just change the way people looked at Volvo. It created a whole new image for the brand. The story of the P1800 begins in the late 50s. Volvo had a solid reputation in Scandinavia, but they wanted to expand into global markets, especially in Europe and North America. And in order to do that, they knew they needed something with more flair. Back then, the sports car scene was exploding. Jaguar had the XK150 and would soon release the E-Type. Mercedes had the 300 SL, and even smaller companies were putting out stylish coupes. Volvo wanted a piece of that pie, so they started working on a project to build a car that wasn't just safe and reliable, but stylish, sporty, and aspirational. The design work was handed over to Pelle Pettersson, a young Swedish designer who studied under Pietro Frua of the legendary Italian coach builder Kia. You can see that Italian influence all over the P1800. It has long and sweeping curves, a low roofline, and just the right amount of chrome. It's one of those cars that looks fast even when it's standing still. When the car was unveiled in 1960 and went into production in 1961, the world was impressed. It was elegant without being ostentatious, sporty without being aggressive. It looked like a car James Bond could drive, and in fact, just a few years later, it became world famous thanks to its role in the television series The Saint, where Roger Moore drove a white P1800 as Simon Templar. That exposure skyrocketed its popularity, and suddenly people everywhere wanted one. But this wasn't just a pretty face. Under the hood, the original P1800 came with a 1.8-liter inline, 4-engine producing about 100 horsepower. By today's standards, that doesn't sound like much, but in the early 60s, that was respectable performance for a sporty coupe. It could cruise comfortably on European highways, had excellent handling for its time, and of course, carried Volvo's legendary durability. In fact, durability is one of the P1800's biggest claims to fame, because one particular example, owned by a man named Irv Gordon, holds the world record for the highest mileage ever recorded on a private vehicle. His P1800 surpassed 3 million miles and it's still running. That's not just reliability, that's almost mythical. But let's talk about the details that make the 1961 model so special. The very first P1800s weren't actually built in Sweden. Volvo didn't have the capacity to produce them at home, so they struck a deal with Jensen Motors in the UK to handle the assembly. These early cars, often referred to as Jensen cars, are the most collectible today. They're rare, built with unique features, and carry that special aura of being the very first batch. Unfortunately, quality control at Jensen wasn't up to Volvo's high standards, and after about 6,000 units, production was moved back to Sweden, where the car became the P1800S. Still, those 1961 Jensen-built cars are highly prized by collectors because they represent the beginning of something truly iconic. From a design perspective, the P1800 had a lot going for it. The long hood, the sculpted sides, the delicate chrome trim around the windows, and those unique tail fins at the back gave it an almost American flair blended with European sophistication. Inside, the car was just as stylish. The dashboard had a beautiful combination of chrome and round dials. The steering wheel was thin and elegant, and the seats were supportive enough for long drives. It was more of a grand tourer than a hardcore sports car, meaning it was designed to be comfortable on long journeys while still offering enough performance to make driving fun. That balance is one of the reasons people loved it so much. The P1800 also marked a turning point for Volvo's global image. Up until then, they were mostly seen as a small Scandinavian automaker building sensible cars. But with the release of this coupe, Volvo was suddenly on the radar of enthusiasts around the world. It showed that the brand could produce something that wasn't just practical but also aspirational. And even though it never had the raw performance of a Ferrari or Jaguar, it made up for it with charm, reliability, and style. That's why even today when you see one on the road, it turns heads immediately. It has that timeless quality that only the best designs possess. Now, let's talk about value. Classic cars have exploded in popularity, and the Peel 1800 is no exception. A pristine 1961 example, especially one of the Jensen-built cars, can fetch a serious price at auction. Collectors are willing to pay top dollar because not only is it rare, but it also has a direct connection to an era when design, style, and character mattered as much as raw performance. And unlike some classics that are fragile or unreliable, the Peel 1800 is a car you can actually drive and enjoy without constant worry. That practicality adds another layer to its appeal. It's not just an ornament to sit in a garage, it's a living, breathing piece of automotive history. Of course, we can't talk about the Peel 1800 without mentioning its pop culture status. Thanks to the Saint, it became one of the most recognized cars of the 60s. Seeing Roger Moore drive one around London gave it an aura of mystery, sophistication, and coolness. In fact, Moore himself reportedly loved the car and continued to own one long after the series ended. That connection cemented its place in the Automotive Hall of Fame. It wasn't just a car, it was a symbol of style and individuality. So why does the 1961 Volvo P1800 still matter today? Because it represents a perfect storm of design, engineering, and cultural impact. It's a car that defied expectations. Nobody thought Volvo could make something so beautiful, and yet they did. Nobody expected it to become a television star, and yet it did. Nobody imagined one could last for over 3 million miles, and yet one has. The P1800 is proof that great cars aren't just about horsepower or lap times. They're about character, longevity, and the way they make you feel when you look at them or sit behind the wheel. This is a car that brings a smile to people's faces, whether they're hardcore enthusiasts or just casual admirers. So the next time you think about Volvo, don't just picture a safe family wagon. Remember the car that started it all, the one that showed Volvo could play in the big leagues of style and desirability. The 1961 Peel 1800 wasn't just another sports coupe. It was a statement, a declaration that this small Swedish company could dream big. And that's why over 60 years later, it remains one of the most beloved classic cars of all time. Thanks for hanging out with me today and diving deep into the story of the 1961 Volvo P1800. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment below with your favorite classic car, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We've got plenty more automotive stories coming your way, and trust me, you won't want to miss them. Until next time, keep driving, keep dreaming, and I'll see you in the next one.